up, y'all? Welcome to Sabrina Talks. I'm Sabrina if you're new. If you're not, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Now today on Sabrina Talks, I want to talk about this Gossip Girl reboot. Now I know many of people have been seeing the chatter online about this Gossip Girl reboot. So since I saw all of that kind of negative chatter about the show, I kind of wanted to take a look at the first 6 episodes of this show and the first 6 episodes of the OG Gossip Girl and kind of compare and contrast them and kind of see why some people are feeling the way they are feeling about this reboot. Now the Gossip Girl reboot came out I think in July of this year, 2021, and I didn't watch it when it first came out because I saw a couple of people saying it just wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. So I was like, okay, I'll let a couple episodes come out and then I'll watch it. So after about 6 episodes came out and they took the little break, I decided to take that time to watch the show and see what everybody was talking about. Now the original Gossip Girl came out in 2007. I was definitely one of those people who was watching it. I never finished Gossip Girl to the end. I'm pretty sure I just figured out one day who ended up being Gossip Girl because I was nosy. But I don't think I watched all of the seasons. I probably got up to maybe the 3rd or the 4th season and then I just stopped watching after that. When I heard they was doing a reboot of Gossip Girl, I was like, do we really need this? No, but here they go trying to reboot a show that didn't need to be touched in the first place. But I understand why they picked this show, because they can continue on with the show without including the original cast. Which brings me to this video today, where I'm going to kind of talk about the things that I think are different and similar to the OG Gossip Girl. Now throughout the rest of this video, I will be saying OG Gossip Girl and Gossip Girl Reboot, or just the reboot. So let's get right into it. First, I want to talk about some of the smaller basic similarities between the shows, and then we'll move on to bigger topics and talk about the similarities and differences within that topic itself.
He waits for the light.
She's not from here.
So one of the basic similarities between these shows is you can see in the first episode where it's somebody coming to New York, and that kind of kicks off all of the drama and all of the things that happen within the show. So in the OG, it's Serena coming back to New York after she's disappeared off to Connecticut. Now in the reboot, Zoya comes to the city after living in Buffalo, and she is now, working her way into New York City and in Constance, and that's when all of the drama starts for that show.
It's not like I have a trust fund to fall back on, Dad. No, all I have is what's up here.
Oh, I take the bus.
Another similarity is in both shows. Once again, as we can see from the first episode, there is one less than wealthy character who kind of joins a group of a bunch of rich friends. In the reboot, it's Zoya coming into Julian and all of her rich people crew. And then in the OG, it's Dan and Jenny essentially getting into that crowd with Serena and Blair and all of them.
Sorry, no, nothing. I just, my sister's right. You're nice.
Too bad you missed the assembly. Not that it matters. Brown doesn't offer degrees and slut.
Monet's the school villain. No one cares. We need to send her someone people are actually drawn to. Like Julian. Not only is she famous, people actually like her.
Looking at the head most popular girl on both of these shows, you can kind of see another similarity between them. Both of these girls are well loved between the characters on the show and just the general public. They're seen as the super nice popular girl. You tend to feel a lot more sympathetic for them as opposed to some of the other characters, and in a way you can't help but root for their success and root for their happiness. Now in the OG, obviously that's Serena. Everybody loves Serena on the OG. She was the main girl. And in the reboot, it's Julian. Obviously, you can also see that same similarity with the popular mean girl. So in the OG, it was Blair. And in the reboot, it's definitely Monet. She's the meanest out of the bunch. Both Monet and Blair are kind of feared throughout the rest of the characters. They're definitely feared throughout the general public. They make snarky remarks about wealth and class and clothes and all of that stuff. So they both essentially kind of take the same role in both of these shows.
You and Julian.
There's no me, Julian. There hasn't been for a long time, long before you got here.
But Claire's my best friend, and you're her boyfriend, and she loves you.
Another similarity between these shows, which is something that's also just a general trope for most teen shows, is some love triangles. I don't know why there's always a love triangle in teen shows, but both these shows definitely include some love triangles. In the OG, it's Nate, Serena, and Blair. And then in the reboot, we get 2 love triangles because why not have more than one? So we have Zoya, Obi, and Julian. And then we have Max, Audrey, and Aki. The love triangle between Max, Audrey, and Aki isn't as serious. They kind of more go into threesome vibes which that's another thing we need to get into, but another day. Whereas with Julian, Zoya, and Obi, they're more of like an actual serious kind of typical love triangle.
You know, Dad, there's this thing called MySpace, where you post all this information online.
Olivia Jade gained followers and her mom went to jail.
Last basic similarity I want to talk about is just the cultural references between both shows. You could definitely tell the era that both of these shows are in just based on the props, the set designs, and just the cultural references that they give you throughout the show. In the OG, you can definitely tell by the fashion that everybody's wearing, the phones that they had. I'm pretty sure there was some Blackberries, a sidekick. I'm pretty sure they also talk about like Britney Spears' mental health breakdown that happened in the early 2000s. They talk about MySpace. They really kind of sneak in these references to you. Be like, oh yes, this is definitely an early 2000s show. With the reboot, it's the same kind of thing. The fashion, you could tell it's definitely more modern. Everybody basically has an iPhone. They heavily talk about social media, whether it's Instagram, Twitter. I think they mentioned YouTube at one point. They also talk about school shootings. They talk about going virtual and the pandemic. They really kind of dive into the current time in their cultural references, which I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like it's a little more heavy-handed than it was in the first 6 episodes of the original Gossip Girl, but that just might be because it's our current time that I'm noticing it more. Who knows? That's about all of the like smaller basic similarities that I can think of. So now let's get into the bigger topics and how they are similar and how they are different between these shows. So the first thing I want to talk about is Gossip Girl herself. Who is Gossip Girl, the impact of Gossip Girl, all things surrounding Gossip Girl in both of these shows. Now the differences between how they handle Gossip Girl in both of these shows is something that I find very fascinating because I think it really affects how people view the reboot. So one of the main differences is who Gossip Girl is, right? So in the first 6 episodes of the OG one, we have no idea who Gossip Girl is. We have no inkling. There's not really much clues. It's kind of the big mystery of the show. Now in the first 6 episodes of the reboot, we already know who Gossip Girl is. We are heavily interacting with Gossip Girl. That's one of the biggest differences within Gossip Girl, and I know they did that on purpose because I believe the creators of the show said they really wanted to focus on the impact of social media rather than like who is Gossip Girl. And I don't know if I'm vibing with that because I feel like the reboot loses most of its intrigue because we're not wondering who Gossip Girl is. I guess now the question becomes like, what will Gossip Girl do and like, will they ever get caught? And that's not as intriguing as who the heck is running all of this, right? Another big difference between these shows with Gossip Girl to me is the impact of Gossip Girl, right? How does Gossip Girl really impact the plot line of the show, impact the characters, that kind of situation? In the reboot of the show, the main characters are heavily focused on Gossip Girl. They're trying to figure out who Gossip Girl is. They're working with Gossip Girl to make it play out in their favor. Gossip Girl has a bigger impact on these characters' lives within the reboot. It drops so much more bombs than it ever did in the OG show. The characters and us find out that Zoya lives at her grandmother's place. We find out that Zoya got the scholarship because of Julian. We see Obi and Zoya at his place undressing, and they really drop all of the big events of whenever Zoya and Julian are feuding. Now in the OG show, Gossip Girl is more for the audience than it is for the main characters. Main characters don't know about Gossip Girl, with the exception of Dan and Jenny. I don't even think all of the main characters besides, like I said, Dan and Jenny go to the Gossip Girl blog at all in the first 6 episodes. So they're not concerned about Gossip Girl. And since they're not really concerned about Gossip Girl, no information is, given to them through Gossip Girl like how it is in the reboot. So whenever Gossip Girl speaks, it's more of information that we as the audience already know. So it's more for like the general public of the actual show instead of like the main characters like how it is in the reboot. What they do have similar between the two Gossip Girls is its impact within the society of, each of their shows. So they have people putting into tips to Gossip Girl. They have people taking photos for Gossip Girl. They have people following Gossip Girl and really, invested into the drama that be happening. And then the obvious similarity that they have with Gossip Girl is the way Gossip Girl talks. I'm glad that they continued on with Kristen Bell as the voice of Gossip Girl.
Guess I could tell him how everything I have I got because I'm an Archibald.
I didn't think you'd be here. I didn't think your dad could have...
would buy a ticket.
Another big thing in the show is the wealth gap between the characters. In the OG, it's Dan and Jenny and Vanessa all, you know, facing up against the rich folk. And then in the reboot, it's just kind of Zoya against everybody else. I think one thing that they do in the OG that they don't really do in the reboot is talk about how poor non-wealthy person is, right? In the OG, everybody was always on Dan's case, and Dan and Jenny were always talking about how they're so poor compared to everybody else. Now, as we all know, they were not poor. They might not be upper class like the rest of the people in Constance and St. Jude, but they wasn't poor. But the way that the characters act and the way that Dan and Jenny were constantly talking about how poor the Humphreys are, we always kind of had that wealth gap conversation within these first 6 episodes. Now in the reboot, maybe it's just because of modern times, but they don't tend to focus on that too much. They kind of discuss like fashion-wise if someone's, you know, poor, and it's mainly like Monet and Luna kind of talking about it. But they're a lot more disinterested, I think. I don't really think they talk about Zoe's wealth too much, besides the fact that she can't afford the clothes that Julian was giving her. Where they do kind of talk about the wealth gap more in a sense is with the character of Obi. And he is where kind of the show makes it similar to the OG, because he's kind of the Nate in this friendship group. Like in the OG, Nate, you know, he was rich, but he was also just kind of disinterested with the rich people lifestyle, and he was more of the person who would kind of be understanding of someone who's a little bit, you know, lesser than him. Obi definitely plays that role in the reboot because he's the one who's the richest out of all of them, but he's actively against his parents and how rich he is, and he's always trying to make it so he doesn't seem as rich, and you know, he has that rich guilt as they mentioned.
Why would I try to steal something from you that I pushed you to do? Because you take everything from me! Nate, my mom! I wish I never came.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have.
The frenemies relationships that are kind of the main crux of both of these shows are definitely something they have similar. The OG, it's Serena and Blair, obviously. And then in the reboot, it's Julian and Zoya. Now, Julian and Zoya are actual sisters, and they don't really know each other. Whereas Serena and Blair, they're not sisters, but they have a lot more history than Zoya and Julian. And I think that kind of makes one of the main differences between these, you know, frenemy relationships. Zoe and Julian know each other because they're sisters and they've been chit-chatting, but they don't really know each other. They don't have history of being friends. So most of their drama and when they become enemies, it's in a way a little bit superficial. Most of their drama is started by somebody else interfering with them, or it's just things of just like miscommunication and just not knowing each other. Whereas with Serena and Blair, they had some real underlying issues with their friendship. Because they have this history within their relationship, most of their drama is started within them because one, Gossip Girl's not really heavily in their world. And two, most of the things is, as Blair says, Serena essentially always takes things from her. So yeah, they have a lot more heavy, you know, under-rooted issues within their friendship to make their frenemy relationship a little more authentic than Julian and Zoya. And I feel like that affects the way I look at the reboot, because when Zoya and Julian was first introduced and we see that they were actually friends and they actually like each other, I was excited because I'm like, great, we don't need no catty behavior because y'all are essentially long-lost sisters, and I was rooting for them to just have a great sister relationship. But then they started doing the unnecessary catty drama. I see why they're trying to be, you know, Sabrina and Blair, but it's not necessary because one, they just met each other, and two, we could just have a nice happy sister relationship and let some of the other characters be like the Serena and Blair.
Eleanor.
It is divine squid and it's Marrakesh.
You know why he's here?
The parents are something also I wanted to talk about in the show because that was a pinnacle of the OG Gossip Girl. We really got to see a lot of the parents. You know, they had their own storylines without the kids and stuff like that. And in the reboot, they don't really have too much outside of their lives in relation to their kids. We get a little bit into Nick's life because we see him trying to like flirt with the teacher, Kate. But for the most part, whenever we see the parents, we see the kid along with them. Same goes with like Audrey's mom and Max's parents. They have their like storyline of their own issues, but it's still related to the child in a way. So it's not like the OG where they are having their own issues separate of their kid. Also, the relationship with the parents to the kids seems to be a bit different between the shows. Like, I feel like in the reboot, it's a lot more like, I love my kid, I want to make sure we have some good relationship with my kid. I think the only person who has like a iffy relationship with their parents is probably Audrey, but that's just because the mom's going through some things. But even then, by the 6 episodes, they kind of seem to be, you know, meshing again. But in the first 6 episodes of the OG, you could tell with Bart, you could tell with Nate's dad, Lily, and even Eleanor a little bit, they had some kind of stringent relationships with their kids. Like, they was talking to them, but it was always like, oh, why are you doing this? Oh, you should be doing this, da 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 da. Like, there was definitely not like fully happy relationships with their parents, besides Rufus, because Rufus obviously was one of the better parents of the show. The last big topic I want to talk about is just the general like serious topics that they kind of cover within the plot lines of both of these shows. But what I feel like happens between these two shows is one takes the serious issues a little bit more seriously, and one kind of just leaves it at surface level. Now, granted, neither of these shows are deep shows, right? But there's ways that they kind of go about it that I feel are different between each other. So, like, in the OG Gossip Girl, those first 6 episodes, we talk about attempted suicides. We see a sexual assault happen. We see that Nate's dad has issues with drugs. We see the implications that Chuck is probably an alcoholic. We talk about legacy and privilege when it comes to college. And like I said, we talk about the wealth gap between some of the characters. Like, there tends to be a lot deeper problems in the OG. Now, the reboot, we still talk about drugs because Julian's dad used to have issues with drugs and alcohol, I think. But he's now sober, so it's not, you know, that big of a deal. We see that Max potentially has issues with drugs and alcohol, but for the most part, that's just kind of brushed aside. We do get kind of the conversation of like fake allyship with like Obi and Zoya, but even then that still felt a little bit surface level. We do have a discussion about like a sexual identity crisis with Aki, but even then that really wasn't taken too seriously. We see the troubles that it kind of brings to Aki and Audrey's relationship, but Aki himself is not really in a crisis. He's just kind of like, yeah, I might also like thinking about guys. He doesn't really dive deep into his feelings about it. No one really dives deep about talking about it. Like, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that happens. But like with the OG, I feel like we have a lot more time to talk about some of the deeper things that happen. Like, we talk about Eric's attempted suicide multiple times in the first 6 episodes. We see him at the facility. We see him talking about whether or not he's okay to go back home, why he attempted suicide. Like, we really dive deep into it, and it's really integral to the characters' plot lines. Whereas in the reboot, like I said, we just kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll talk about it for a second, and then that's kind of it. And I feel like that takes away the interesting factor to me. Like, I don't expect it to really dive deep into it and really be like a serious show about XYZ. But I'd like more than a conversation about some of these topics. But what I will say in defense of like the reboot is we are in more modern times than it was back in the early 2000s. So maybe they feel like they don't need to have these deep conversations and really dive into these deeper topics because it's their modern day. Most people already know about it. Most people really have these conversations. Maybe they don't feel like they need to fully have it, right? Or in the case of like Aki's sexual identity crisis, he's a lot more casual about it. Maybe just because at this point in 2021, people are a lot more casual about these kind of things. Like, okay, so yeah, maybe I also like messing around with guys as well as girls. Okay, that's just, you know, something that I now know about myself. And that can be a good thing in terms of representation of like the queer community, and not having a sexual identity crisis always be so big and so like monumental, and showing that it can just be something that's just like oh, new information I found about myself. cool and, you know, leave it at that. But like I said, I'll give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but not all of the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, overall, I think you could definitely tell the Reboot is a Gossip Girl show, right? It doesn't feel far removed from the show. It definitely has a lot of things similar to make it feel like Gossip Girl. But as I expected, the differences between the shows is kind of what's really getting people in their feelings about it. And it's not in like a, oh, there's differences between the shows, but it's in a positive way. It's like there's differences between these two shows and it's negative. It's not something that people want. But the Reboot is a decent show, I will say. It's not terrible. It's not something that's unwatchable. Like, I'll continue to watch it till the end of the season. Like, characters are intriguing enough. The drama is semi-intriguing enough to keep watching it. It's definitely still a bit messy, just not maybe as messy as the OG one. I feel like most people wouldn't have many issues with it if it didn't have the Gossip Girl title to it and it wasn't in the Gossip Girl world. Now, this is just my opinion, but to me it seems like a watered down version of the OG Gossip Girl, which I think is funny because it's on HBO Max, so it definitely has more room to be a little bit more raunchier, a little bit more crazier, messier, all of that jazz, because it's not on a cable television network. That's just something that I kind of feel. That doesn't make it bad, but it doesn't make it great either. Now, truthfully, I feel like if you want to watch a messy teen show that involves a bunch of rich kids at a boarding school, I definitely think you should watch Elite. I love Elite. The first season was immaculate, and then each season progressing after that I also really enjoyed. So I feel like you get the same kind of vibes. We get some poor kids coming into a rich kid boarding school. We get the drama of the love triangle. We get some catty mean girls. We get all of the things that you would get from Gossip Girl, except for the whole Gossip Girl aspect to it. And interchange that with a murder mystery, and it's great. So I definitely suggest watching that. I mean, I also recommend watching, you know, the actual Gossip Girl Reboot if you've liked Gossip Girl in the past. But if you're really feeling for that messy teen drama, Elite's where it's at. But yeah, guys, that about wraps up my video for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please give it a like if you did. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about this Gossip Girl Reboot. If you like the original Gossip Girl, who's your favorite character in this reboot? My personal favorite is technically Aki, even though he doesn't get much screen time and much storylines, but I love him. So let me know who's yours in the comments. You can also let me know on my social media. I'm at Sabrina Talks 2 on Instagram and Twitter, and at Sabrina Talks 2U on TikTok. If you would like to see more Gossip Girl content on my channel and just more music, TV shows, and movie commentary, you should subscribe to my channel. Share this video with your friends so we can all talk about the Gossip Girl Reboot. Once again, thank you so much for watching. And as always, please remember to be safe, be smart, be kind, and I'll catch y'all in my next video. Bye, guys.